Welcome to StudyIQ. My name is Bhuvan. This is the Indian Express Explain class. Let's get started. I have 3 topics for you. The first one is a deep dive into the All India Judicial Service. So the Honorable President recently batted in favor of the All India Judicial Services. So we should go ahead and understand, because again from the mains perspective this makes for a ready-made question. Okay. So say, what is the constitutional provision regarding, say, the services of judiciary? How do you recruit people to the lower judiciary? What is the constitutional provision? What is being done currently? Okay. And then say, what are the pros and the cons, the benefits and the challenges that you need to look at, right? So that's going to be agenda number 1. Then number 2, we go ahead and understand the difference between two mobile technologies. So we'll look at VoLTE, okay, and then the one that is being introduced recently or is being sought to be introduced, right? So what you will find is, say, in the Indian context, right now we are focusing on this, but the major carriers, say Vodafone, Airtel, or the other companies, Jio and all of them, they are looking to roll out this particular very soon. VONR, Voice over New Radio. Okay, so we'll seek to understand the difference between long-term evolution, LTE, versus 5G or say new radio. What are the major differences? And then number 3, we'll take a look at a joint project of the Indian Navy and the DRDO. Okay, that goes by the name of Project Bhishma. And under Project Bhishma, they have gone ahead and commissioned a new particular type of hospital, which will have immense importance in disaster management. Okay, so from the disaster management perspective, when you talk about the institutional preparedness, right, you will find that this is one of the key examples that you could quote in the examination, the Arogya Maitri Aid Cube. So we'll seek to understand all 3 of them one by one, and then we'll also look at the questions that follow as usual, right? For any of you who are new here, you go ahead and connect with me on my Telegram channel, where I'll upload the PDF of this entire lecture. And you will also go ahead and find, say, questions and resource material being uploaded from time to time. However, please do understand that I do not believe in spamming my students. Information overload is one particular problem that any serious aspirant faces. And so I go ahead and complement your preparation rather than overburden you with 100 resources, none of which you eventually read thoroughly in the end. Okay. Right. So let's look at it. First topic for the day. What is All India Judicial Service and why has it failed to become a reality? Okay. Akash Deep, good morning. Coder, Bulbul, good morning guys. Thank you for joining. Thanks. Right. So President Mumu recently advocated for All India Judicial Services, bringing a long-standing issue back into focus. So when you look back at the history of it, yes, it has been back and forth between whom? So the Law Commission on several occasions has, spoken positively about it, right? Then a case was there in Supreme Court. Supreme Court pushed it back to the legislature. And what you find is that neither party really wants to go ahead and address this issue. And as a civil service aspirant, you need to understand why. And that is primarily to do with 2 particular facets. Number 1 is the issue of, say, having executive or giving executive a larger role in judicial appointments. Does that infringe upon the separation of powers that the Constitution expects or mandates? And number 2, what you find is, insofar as the AIGS's implementation is concerned, the number of stakeholders is very high. Okay, which means consensus building is going to be an issue, right? And the second point that I told you, right, it has to do with the separation of powers. You see, so straight away you realize that this is going to become a contentious issue, right? So President in her address said that AIGS will help make judiciary diverse by increasing representation from marginalized social groups. So in this discussion, we look at the history, then we look at the constitutional provisions and the challenges, the benefits to AIGS, right? But please do keep these 2 in mind. Okay, then you'll realize that these are the central 2 points on which the AIGS discussion revolves around. Adarsh, good morning. Thanks for joining. Right, let's look at the All India Judicial Service. So what is the whole point of it? Aim to centralize the recruitment of judges at the level of additional district judges and district judges. What happens currently then? Right, if the AIGS mandates centralization, what is happening? So currently you find that each state, right, goes ahead and recruits its judges. The State Public Service Commission does that, and you have equal, say, participation of the judiciary, and then they are appointed by the governor, right? So the current framework essentially mandates the stakeholders, SPSC. Then you are looking at obviously the High Court, and then the appointment being given by the governor, right? But the AIGS would replace all of this and put it in the hands of the union government. Now, what does Article 312 say? So, two operative articles that you ought to know of. One is 312 and one is 236. Okay, and you will see how 312 and 236 are almost balancing each other out, right? So, 312 says that the AIGS be created on a resolution passed by the Rajya Sabha. Why the Rajya Sabha? Because the Council of the States, it's a federal matter, which means that the state's representation must be taken into account, which is why Rajya Sabha needs to go ahead and pass a resolution by special majority, 2/3 majority. Now, 312 subclause 2 states that AIGS cannot include any post inferior to that of a district judge, right? So, the minimum you can go and recruit for is a district judge. But then the definition of district judge is quite wide, right? It can include a civil court judge, an additional district judge, joint district judge, assistant district judge, chief judge. You are looking at all the way up till assistant sessions judge. Realize that. So straight away the definition is quite high. Now the AIGS, essentially from the most simplistic manner you can understand, is just that the UPSC, how the UPSC goes and recruits officers and allots them cadres based on their rank and their preference. Similarly, the AIGS would also probably adopt a similar model, right? So this is again to go ahead and replace the current framework where you find the participation of the State Public Service Commission, the High Court of the particular state, and the governor. Now, let's look at the major differences. So 233 and 234 of the Constitution, like I showed you right now, deal with the appointment of district judges. And this is exclusive domain of the states. Now, this is the operative part that you need to know of. This SPSC does it with the High Court. And then you have the panel of the High Court judges. You see why this becomes a problem. Panels of High Court judges interview candidates after the exam and then recommend them for appointment. So then you find the governor issues the notification and then they are appointed by the governor. What is the problem with this? That you have, say, increased cases that are lying pending in our judiciary, in our state judiciary, lower judiciary. And then you have not just, say, the judicial duties, okay. Obviously, this is the primary work of the judiciary, but you're also giving them, say, managerial and recruitment duties. So what happens? Eventually, the primary work suffers. Thus you have, say, the backlog of cases that comes up. So one merit of AIGS you can straight away understand is that you will give your High Court judges much more time to go ahead and focus on the primary work, the dispensation of justice, right? The district judges appointed by the governor, and all judges, well, they're selected by exam, provincial civil services judicial exam that we also know as the judicial services exam, okay? State to state differs. So please understand this crux first, that because your High Court judges are having to interview, from the efficiency viewpoint, it seeks to bring down the judicial efficiency in a particular state. Now going forward, let's look at the challenges. So as you realize, because of the number of stakeholders, so at the state level, you are looking at the three stakeholders that we identified, the SPSC, the High Court of the particular state, as well as the governor. And then you realize that the union is also an entity in this, right? And then you have, say, the Supreme Court. So all of them need to come on the same page for AIGS to happen, which is why the consensus is right now time consuming. It's taking a lot of time, right? Several occasions you will find that, well, say you have a ministers meeting with chief justices, or you have high courts and the central government meeting on a particular platform. And then at the end of it all, when they're deciding the eligibility, the criteria, the qualifications, the procedure of the examination, yes, how will cadre allotment be done if at all of that are fine-tuning, say, major issues. And you realize that consensus on not all of them are uniformly achieved. Thus, this is taking a lot of time. Now, number two, fears of dilution of separation of powers. A very valid argument, in fact, that you will eventually have the AIGS, which will be done by the union government. And thus, can you say that this is an example of where the executive is now going into the domain of the judiciary? And because of this, what you find is that this is a valid criticism that one may expect, that the separation of powers that the Constitution mandates, that might be getting infringed. Similarly, local language, law, customs may create challenges for the effective delivery of justice, right? So, for example, day before yesterday, the Chief Justice of India, Justice Chandrachud, He was at the Forest Research Institute in Dehradun. And there he spoke about this need for higher judiciary to go and move past English as the language of the delivery of justice. Right? You must be aware that in the Supreme Court only English is the language of use. Right? So the Supreme Court's Chief Justice saying, well, we need to go past that. But then the challenges to that. So for example, you're looking at specific Latin terms that are used freely. Now, how do you go ahead and interpret and translate that Latin term? Right? Will the correct meaning be translated to? It's not just say verbatim, you go ahead and use Google Translate and get a particular translation. No. Right? It has to be contextual. So for that, the Supreme Court says, and the Chief Justice says that, well, can we use artificial intelligence to develop a model for better translations for judiciary? Right? Now, at the lower court, you find that, well, the court proceedings could be happening in the local languages. Now, the AIJS, so for example, a central examination is conducted. Now, you are sent to, say, a state in, say, a state like Sikkim, where you are unaware of the local language, the Nepali language. So, what happens then? Yes, will that affect the dispensation of justice? Correct? Similarly, state minorities and backward groups may lose out if reservation is based on central list. That is also one particular criteria of concern for many. And then you find that the current people who are already recruited, right? So their promotional avenues may also get hampered, because then you have the new batch come in and say occupy the posts. So their promotional avenues also need to be guaranteed in the system of the AIJS. Now, once we realize the challenges, let's look at the benefits. Okay. First one, you straight away realize you're going to free up your High Court judges from recruitment duties. Thus, they can focus more on their judicial duties, right? You're promoting accountability, transparency, not just in the process, by the way, the process of recruitment and allocation, not just in this, but also in the adjudication of justice, right? So, you will have uniform application of laws uniformly because they all are being commonly pooled from a particular source, right? You are looking at increasing the judge to population ratio. Our judge to population ratio is among the lowest in the entire world, right? Which is why you find the backlog of cases becomes a reality, because there are not just enough judges to go ahead and say clear the immense backlog that lies since years, right? You are looking at attracting fresh legal talent, younger people, more motivated people possibly, and most importantly, the public perception about judiciary might go and undergo a drastic overhaul. So yesterday in the CLAD examination, if you looked at the RC questions, you will find one particular passage mentions this very problem. And there they discuss the term docket exclusion, right? Again, if you're preparing for the civil services, I would advise you to go ahead and have a look at the paper, especially the RC passages. Why? Because eventually they are to do with those particular mechanisms and avenues that are commonly used in the UPSC framework, right? So I'll share the paper on my Telegram channel, have a look at it, and you'll realize that, well, most of this is being carried forward uniformly and acrossly throughout the entire country, right? Okay, let's look at this question very quickly, my friends. How many of the above are part of the jurisdiction of a high court, right? Can it punish for its contempt? Can it tender advice? You can say legal advice, yes. Can it tender legal advice to the president? Can it tender legal advice to the governor? Can it issue certain writs? How many of the above are part of the jurisdiction of the high court? And question number 2. So you will go ahead and identify which particular high court has jurisdiction over the areas of Lakshadweep, Andaman and Nicobar, Dadra and Nagar Haveli, and Yanam, right? You must realize that, well, these particular locations don't have high courts, right? So do they have circuit benches, or what is the entire scenario? You let me know in the comment box. We will discuss the right answers in the next class. Right, very quickly before I go forward in 60 seconds or less, the SIP Plus Success in Prelims that is being launched by StudyIQ, right? You will have intensive, focused, topic-based analysis and concept building. And that will be followed by, say, full-length tests in both CSAT and GS. You're looking at frequent doubts clearing sessions, because why? Eventually, the pain point for most of the aspirants is to clear the prelims bit, right? So you go ahead and prepare the whole year for your mains from the mains perspective, but you often find that you go ahead and say, do not clear your prelims. That's a major setback. And why is that? Because eventually it's either to do with the knowledge base, yes, that you're lacking that particular objectivity insofar as the prelim syllabus is concerned, or you're looking at, say, the exam temperament that is often ignored by a candidate, by the way. The ability to go ahead and maximize your output in those 2 hours insofar as question solving is concerned. You know, that's an ability that you have to learn. which is why I suggest for any of you who are interested in signing up for the SIP Plus program, right? Use the code BA Live because you get allotted to my geography batches, as well as I take care of your reading comprehension and disaster management and other subjects of interest, whereas my other colleagues, my esteemed colleagues, take a look at the other subjects for you. Yes, the entire mantra is to give you the knowledge base as well as the question solving ability, so that on the 26th of May 2024, you're not found wanting, right? Use the code BA Live. You will find the sign up link in the description box below. ठीक है, आगे बढ़ते हैं. So Volt versus VO 5G, voice over 5G. So what is Volt firstly? Know the full form. Okay, I'm pretty sure that many of you must have heard of this, but will not be able to tell me the full form. So the basics, the fundamentals need to be absolutely clear. So it's voice over long-term evolution, which entered the scene in India in 2016, right? How was it a better upgrade over, say, your 2G, 3G networks? So many. You had increased, say, the response time, the connectivity time between two phones, that goes down, right? So your connectivity time was reduced, right? Now you also find that your call drops as compared to, say, 2G or 3G. As compared to that also went down, right? Your call connectivity, your clarity, voice clarity went up. Correct? This is what we are expecting right now. So how is 5G better then? We will find that. Okay, let's go ahead and understand them individually. But please understand VONR stands for voice over new radio. It's nothing else but the other name for voice over 5G. Okay. Now, chances are, if you have recently bought a new very shiny phone on one of these great sales that keep happening, yes, your phone is already voice over 5G equipped. It is already equipped, you need not worry. But do we in India right now have voice over 5G? No, right now we don't. Okay, what you will find is the major carriers, for example, Vodafone, Airtel, Jio, Reliance, BSNL is behind the curve, so we'll not include it. But the major, say, private carriers, they are exploring avenues. They are going ahead and testing. It's in the testing phase. And so you can expect that in the coming future, you will have voice over 5G that will be rolled out in India. Which is why from the exam perspective, it becomes important for you. Okay, let's go ahead and understand voice over new radio. Okay, this allows voice calls over 5G networks instead of the current standard 4G, right? Thus, you find the name is voice over 5G. Now, what you will find is in terms of speed, capacity, responsiveness, it is absolutely a major improvement on voice over long-term evolution. That's the current one that we are using. As compared to this, immediate improvement. Okay. Now, what do you need? Three things, right? If you have a phone that supports 5G, which I'm sure if you have bought a phone recently in the last 6 months, it's already equipped. Okay. And you have a carrier that offers voice over 5G services. So your Airtels, your Jios, your Vodafones should offer that service. And you should have 5G signal in your area. That's all. If you fulfill this criteria, your phone is VO 5G equipped. Okay. Now, what is the benefit? Enhanced call quality, right? Better audio codecs you are using, right? An audio codec is the fundamental basis on which sound travels. You're looking at faster connection time, which means your latency. Latency is reduced. Latency in networking is nothing but the time taken for the information to transmit from point A to point B, right? So the time taken is reduced, the connections are faster, and you find that the reliability is obviously higher. Your call drops are gone. No longer will you say hello, hello in the middle of the call and you do not know whether the other person is connected or not, right? So this is the major difference between voice over new radio and the voice over long-term evolution. Charu, good morning. Thanks for joining, guys. Okay, चलिए सवाल देखिए. Go ahead and identify the correct features of voice over new radio. Increased latency, lesser call drops, lesser codecs, or faster connection, right? You must know the difference now between codec and latency. Okay. So for example, this is well known. This will be easily solvable. But these are little technical in nature. I have explained you the difference. If you followed the lecture closely, this is a very easy question for you, right? So go ahead, answer the questions for me, leave your answers in the comment box. And if you understood the two topics, AIJS as well as voice over new radio, do not hesitate to leave me a like, please. Yes, it will give me an immense boost. And these are the small minor benefits, the small happinesses that educators really live for, right? So I really appreciate that if you hit the like button right now. Okay, let's go ahead. The books, by the way, the 18 books, UPSC specific set of 18 books that StudyIQ has launched, incredibly well received by the student community. What you find is that they are on sale. Yes, you go ahead, apply the code BA Live, right? And you find that the entire set of books will be mailed to you. And by mailed, I mean physically mailed. Okay, they are being offered in English and Hindi. So make sure that you choose your language of preference, and those set of books will reach you in no time. Okay, I hope that many of you make use of this opportunity, as those set of books are the entire comprehensive syllabus that have been collated from several sources. So it saves you a lot of trouble. All right, let's go and look at Project Maitri, and well, what exactly is Arogya Maitri and Aid Cube. Before you understand this, let's understand Project Bhishma. This is very important, because what you find is that this entire portable hospital, it has been built under the Project Bhishma, which is a joint collaboration between the Indian Navy and the DRDO. Right? So Project Bhishma, a joint collaboration, a project of the Indian Navy and DRDO, right? And their focus is to go ahead, and when you look at the document that has been released, so you will find that their entire focus is to build a world-class hospital, right? A world-class hospital that is mobile in nature. Why? Why do you need a mobile world-class hospital? Because eventually you find that this will find a lot of application in disaster management, right? When you talk about disaster management, GS paper 3, you will find that the institutional preparedness that you talk of, or the risk, when you go ahead and reduce your risk, one of the key components of risk reduction is to have institutional preparedness. What do you mean by that? That you create the capacity within the system to go ahead and build resilience. Now, if these are completely new terms, well, you should go ahead and sign up for the P2I program that I just told you about, okay? Because disaster management is a key component and one of the low-hanging fruits in GS paper 3, right? You just need to know a couple of very important topics, and then after that, it's the application of the geography knowledge, essentially, right? So you find that, well, this is one of the key areas or key examples of capacity building, right? And this is essentially to go ahead and build resilience in the system, right? So what does these terms mean? So because you have a mobile hospital, right, this can straight away be deployed in an area of that is being plagued by disaster. Or you can have several of these that are deployed across the country, so that in case, God forbid, you have a disaster that strikes, yes, your current hospital system, your current healthcare system is not overloaded, right? So this was the entire focus of Project Bhishma. That was a joint collaboration of Indian Navy and DRDO. So they have gone ahead, and the world's first portable hospital, Arogya Maitri Aid Cube, well, it has been unveiled recently, not far from where I am coming to you right now in Gurugram. Okay, and well, designed indigenously in the Project Bhishma. So 72 detachable mini cubes. Not very difficult for you to understand this. Okay, so please understand that the entire focus of this is that it is designed on a Rubik's Cube concept. What is a Rubik's Cube? I'm sure you have all solved it. So you have 9 different colors arranged by rows of 3 by 3. Yes, it revolves on a central axis, and you go ahead and will eventually get it to a correct alignment where you have similar colors on each face, right? So this Rubik's Cube was developed by an Hungarian innovator. Yes, his name was Erno Rubik. Yes, this was the individual. He came up with the concept of Rubik's Cube. So 9 different colors arranged in 3 by 3, and that rotates on a central axis, right? So you find that, well, this particular hospital, this whole design takes its inspiration from the Rubik's Cube. So you have 2 main interconnected chambers that are connected, and then you can go ahead and accommodate a number of patients within each small segment that pops up, right? So once again, very, very important, and an absolute evidence that you should use in the examination insofar as introducing resilience in the Indian preparedness for disasters is concerned. Kaushik, bahut badhiya, thanks for asking. Right? Let's look at this question, guys. Identify the correct features of Rubik's Cube. Rotates on a central axis, 9 colored cube faces, 3 rows of 3 each. Hungarian inventor Erno Rubik. You will let me know your answers in the comment box. Right? And please do ensure that disaster management GS paper 3, right, You have ample time to go ahead and prepare for this. Why? Because this is one of the low-hanging fruits, right? It's very, very difficult to get the questions of this incorrect. Okay. You look at paper 3, you're looking at another internal security questions. Huh? They are the low-hanging fruits. You cannot get them wrong at all, right? All you need to know are a basic concepts and just apply your geography knowledge thereafter. Okay, right? So if you have any particular doubts related to what we discuss here today, you go ahead and connect with me on my Instagram channel. I'll be happy to help you out. Several of you are already in touch with me and we are making good use of our each other's time. Okay, let's look at the questions from the last class very quickly. How many of the above are part of the Representation of People Act 1950? So last class we discussed the difference between 1950 Representation of People Act and RPA 1951. Now what you'll realize is that the primary difference you will find is that this is to do with all of that is to be done before the elections. Okay, and this is to do with the actual conduct of the elections, right? And then you have, say, the other differences that follow, but primarily you can go ahead and categorize them as such. So preparation of electoral rolls before the election, delimitation before the election, allocation of seats before the election, by-elections, conduct of elections. So you find that C is the correct answer. 3 of them are true here. Right? Al-Aqsa in the news in Jerusalem, absolutely true. Hagia Sophia in Turkey, again in the news, absolutely correctly matched. Borobudur is essentially in Indonesia, Java. Right? And Christ the Redeemer is in Brazil. Right? You must have seen this in several movies. In fact, let's have a look at the photo right now. So on your left is Christ the Redeemer. You must have seen it in several movies. Very, very famous. Okay, Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. And this is Borobudur, by the way, the world's largest religious monument. Okay, it's the world's largest religious monument. Okay, it's to do with Mahayana Buddhism. Right, and this is in Java, Indonesia. So, you're correctly matched here being just 1 and 2, which means B being my answer. Okay. And we look at this question, how many of the above are correctly matched? Last class we looked at, well, Manipuri culture in particular, especially the wedding dresses. And you find that Manipuri dance is again one of the key dances that you ought to have a very good idea about. Okay. Nritya to do with pure dance. Nritya is interpretive dance, absolutely correct. Natya, well, straight away you realize it's to do with expressions through Abhinay, which is acting. Okay. And Prabandha are the musical compositions. You find all of them are correctly matched. D being my answer here. Right, let's look at my clear students, star students who go ahead and answer very proactively in every class. Eldho, just a minute, Neeraja, Shubham, Pooja, Jagabandhu, Trupti, Studying Raccoon, Harshit, Pranjul, Mandip Bhai, Akhil, Sonu, Manoj, Coder, Satyabrata, well done, Aditya, Gatsu, Vidit, Nishchay and Abhishek. Excellent job, guys. Okay, keep up the momentum, keep answering the questions on a daily basis. And whenever you read an article, always try and link it with the particular syllabus that you have. Okay, an article makes no sense if you're not integrating it with your studies or if you're not solving it. Either of that you have to do compulsorily with every piece of information that you consume, which is the entire focus at this morning session, this Indian Express Explained that comes to you every morning at 7 a.m. Right? We'll call it a wraps for today. This is where you go ahead and connect with me to access the PDF of the entire lecture, as well as some questions coming your way later this day. Okay, that's it. That's it for today. I'll see you in the next class. Stay updated. Connect with me on my Telegram channel and have a very productive day ahead. Bye, friends.